Hi, and welcome to Omni Edition Garden City. I'm Dan York. With me now is Allyson Bettis. She is Garden City's City Clerk Treasurer, and we want to talk about the Michigan, I want to say this right, Presidential Preference Primary. Did I say it right?
Very good, an alliteration. I love that.
And that is coming up when?
That is coming up on March 8th.
Okay.
And so we wanted to it's a little different in terms of what kind of elections we usually have. And we wanted to just sit down and chat with your viewers and make sure they have all their questions answered.
Okay. And by different, we mean essentially the city is holding two separate elections or two separate primaries. Is that a correct statement?
That sounds fair. Basically, the Democratic Party and the Republican parties have asked the state of Michigan to insist that local municipalities hold their preference primaries.
Okay.
It's an election for the parties.
Okay. And because of that, you may only vote as a Republican or you may only vote as a Democrat, correct?
Correct. This is a closed primary. There are two types of primaries, and this is called a closed primary. It's used, and there are open primaries. Open primaries are the ones we usually see in August, where you can narrow down candidates and you can pick from either one side or the other, and both parties' candidates are listed on the same ballot.
Okay.
However, this is a closed primary. In a closed primary, you may only select a ballot for one party or the other.
Which means you must declare whether you would like to vote the Republican ballot or the Democratic ballot.
That is absolutely correct. You can't say I'm an independent and I want both of them, or you have to pick one. You have to select one according to Michigan law.
And this comes up only for the presidential election, correct?
Yes, that's the only time that happens to occur. So every 4 years we get questions from our voters who resent that.
And probably more than questions, as you say, they resent that. So it probably creates quite a conflict and quite a bit of trouble for your office.
Well, yes, and we're somewhat used to it after some time now, but and we are happy to answer those questions. But yes, we want to make sure that they understand that the state legislature, which is governed by representatives from each party, they have made this determination, and it may be a little different than what you might see in other states such as Iowa and perhaps New Hampshire. I'm not even sure.
And that's where they have a caucus.
Those are called caucuses.
Right.
And those are not elections, or they are elections, but they're not government elections.
Sure, those are run by the party individually.
Correct.
And Michigan has had a caucus before, right? We've not always had a primary. It's kind of went back and forth.
I'm not sure, you're a lot older than I am, but
wow.
but I do believe that they have had.
Yeah, but it's been a very long time, as you said.
Yes.
All right. So the only thing on this ballot in March is the presidential primary, right? So it's not like you have to declare Republican or Democrat and then there's another ballot for general items. There is only the presidential preference primary, period.
Right. And that's a little hard to understand because, first of all, your application for an absentee ballot will ask you to select a local ballot without the presidential primary. And that has to be on there because there are some cities who may have a local issue that would be included, and you could vote on that without voting for the Democratic or Republican primary ballots. However, in Garden City, we have no such local proposal or issue for this election, so it's a moot spot.
All right.
And you really just need to select one or the other as far as Republican or Democrat.
Okay. So let's talk about the actual application.
Okay.
Because this is probably where all the trouble will begin.
It is.
So when you go to vote at the polls, you will be asked, would you like a Republican ballot or a Democratic ballot, correct?
Yes, we all fill out that little application to vote when we come to the polls, and you just jot down your name and your birth date, I think. And on that, you will be asked to make that selection. Okay. And then the election inspector will give you the ballot that you requested.
The appropriate ballot.
Yes.
So with the absentee application,
Yes.
the same thing applies, but in writing.
It's the same thing. Both of them will be in writing, but yes, it'll be a process where you're going to get the same absentee voter application that you always get, but you have to select, and we mark it number 1 with an arrow, so you'll know that you have to make that selection one way or the other. You can choose not to vote in the party elections. If you choose not to, don't worry about it. Just throw your absentee ballot application. But we did send these applications out, I think, last week, and so we're beginning to get them back. And so we just want to make sure if you don't make that selection, unfortunately, we're required to send that back to you and remind you again
So
that
you
you
will
have
send
to.
it back to the people. You don't just toss it in the trash.
No.
You acknowledge to them that they need to make a decision.
Yes, and just like any other absentee ballot application, if you don't fill it out properly or if you don't have the correct information on there, we send it back to you and ask you to get it back with us.
Okay.
But
Go ahead.
I'm going to choose this time to reiterate to our public that you may be on our permanent list of people who would like to receive an absentee ballot application, but you have to fill that out for every election. So sometimes I'm able to say, like later on this year, I'll be able to say, do you want one for the August election and do you want one for the November election? And I'll be able to say that at the same time. So even though you filled out one this year for the March election, you'll still need to do it again in August for the August and November election.
But for the August election or primary, you will be able to then say yes to both August and November?
Yes.
It's just because this is so unique.
Yes, and
that
it
you
has
can't.
that restriction as far as the party you're selecting.
Okay. So as if declaring which party you want to vote for is not distasteful enough, there is a list kept of which ballot you asked for.
Unfortunately, or your legislators have provided a law that says that I have to send a list, and I believe it's 22 days or something like that, after the election of all of those voters who selected a Republican ballot and all of those voters who selected a Democratic
And it's
ballot.
not just for the absentee ballot, it's also for the people that show up that day in March to vote.
That is correct. Oh, joy.
Yes. So, but let's reiterate, this is not on paper, this is not a state-run election. It is executed by the state, it is executed by the city, but this is specifically for the Republican Party, this is specifically for the Democratic Party, put all the rhetoric aside.
Yes, it is. And unfortunately, the law says that we have to do this, but it is their election.
Correct. So the ballot itself, same thing. You'll be handed one or the other, so you can't accidentally cross over and spoil your ballot.
Correct. Not in that manner. You'll only receive one ballot, and you can choose whichever ballot you want that to be.
Okay. So on each side, there'll be the Republican presidential candidates. We threw that at the beginning, and we haven't really said it since. The Republican presidential candidates and the Democratic presidential candidates.
Correct.
There is also a vehicle by which people can request a ballot but be uncommitted, correct?
There is.
As if this wasn't confusing enough.
Each party is allowed to have a space that says uncommitted. It doesn't mean you're uncommitted as far as which party you're interested in voting for. It just says that you're not decided in terms of which candidate of that party you're voting for. So
Okay.
on the Democratic ballot and on the Republican ballot, you will see at the bottom of each of those an uncommitted space. And that's your way of telling whichever party you've chosen that I am interested in your party, however, I haven't made a decision as to which of the candidates you've proposed I'm interested in.
Okay. How is the decision made who gets on these ballots? By the parties themselves also?
Partially. Part of it is a part of the party process, and they tell the Secretary of State who gets on that ballot. However, candidates that want to get on that are not on there have a means to do that, and it's very complicated. and I will leave that to the Secretary of
Okay.
State to explain.
All right. Recently, the legislature voted to change straight party voting, straight party ticket voting.
Yes.
And again, without asking you to explain too much of it, what does that mean to Garden City voters?
So it won't mean anything for the March election. However, it will mean something in the November election. As we discussed, this election is a closed primary, and so you have to choose one party publicly. And then in August, you'll have an open primary where you're going to choose where you have to choose one party privately.
But you don't declare that.
You don't declare it in the August primary.
But you must stay within your lane, if you will.
That is
correct. If you want to
correct.
vote for the Republican candidates, you must stay on the Republican part of the ballot. If you want to vote on the Democratic one, you have to stay on the Democratic part of the ballot. And if you crisscross, you'll actually spoil your ballot.
You'll spoil
That's
your
for
ballot.
August.
And that's the one that all of our election inspectors fuss at you and say, I'm sorry, you split your ballot and you can't do that. And then everybody says, oh, yuck, and starts all over again.
So you're able to re-vote if you put it in the
course.
machine and it says you voted incorrectly?
Yes, of course.
Oh, okay, good.
Our machines will spit it out and say, you split the ballot, and would you like to?
Again, that's August primary only. 'Cause
That's
this
the
is
August
gonna
open
be very
primary.
confusing, folks.
Yes. However, in November, that is the one, the general election, where they have eliminated your ability to vote for all of the candidates from one party or the other.
Sure.
And so now you'll have to go through and select each candidate for each race that you prefer. You won't be able to tell it that I just only want these type of candidates.
So you can still vote for just one party, but you have to do it individually, race
Correct.
by race.
Correct.
Okay. Nice job by the legislature to help us out here, huh?
I'm a little divided on that one. Some would suggest that there are going to be longer lines because it takes longer to do that. But I'm not certain that a lot of people vote one or the other exclusively. I think the majority, and I'm just guessing, but my feeling is the majority like to go in various directions.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. Closed primary coming up in March, and that date again is?
March 8th.
All right, and that is a closed presidential preference primary only.
Correct.
Must declare what party you are voting for. You will be given the appropriate ballot.
Correct.
Must declare in your absentee ballot,
Application.
if you choose your absentee ballot application, must declare there if you choose to vote absentee.
Correct.
Okay. August, open primary, but you still can only vote for one party or the other. You just don't have to declare it to any of the voting folks.
That is correct. And there is also in the August one a nonpartisan section of the ballot always, and you can vote for people there.
And then November, general election, no longer straight party. In the old days when it used to be the switch, you can't just vote for one party and have it take all the way down. You'll have to vote for each person individually as you choose.
Unless they change their minds again.
Unless they change their minds again. All right, so we will have a Q&A. We will have frequently asked questions regarding the presidential preference primary.
Correct.
On the city's website at gardencitymi.org. That's gardencitymi.org. It will be on the home page. Will also be on the clerk's page to try to explain what we tried to explain so elegantly here today. And what is there a deadline? I always ask this. Is there a deadline to register to vote for the presidential preference primary?
Yes, it's February 8th, so it's coming up within a few weeks here.
Okay.
And if you've moved or if you just turned 18 and you're going to be 18 before March 8th, and any of those circumstances, you want to check and see if you're registered, you can go to our website and you're able to check there. And anybody else needs to make sure that they're registered by February 8th.
Okay. Is there a deadline to vote absentee?
No.
Okay.
Well, I take it back. The Saturday before, we're open always the Saturday before election, and that would be the deadline unless there's an emergency.
To pick up the ballot.
To pick up the ballot.
You can turn it in actually on election day.
Up until 8 o'clock.
Up until 8 o'clock.
But please don't.
All right, very good. Well, Allison, I want to thank you very much for coming by to try to explain this to the folks.
Thank you
I'm
for
sure
allowing
there'll
me.
still be a little bit of confusion, but at least we can start the process of trying to educate folks on this.
And Monday through Thursday, 9 to 5, you can call our office, 793-1620, and
Okay.
we can answer any questions that you may still have.
All right, well, good luck with this election and the future elections coming up.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's Omni Edition Garden City for this week. Thanks very much for watching, and good night, everybody.